Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving right into a truly fascinating blueprint today, how a society actually builds its most valuable asset, which is, of course, its youth. We're going to be unpacking an incredibly insightful academic text that breaks down exactly what young people need to thrive and the surprisingly structured role that the family unit plays in delivering all of it. So if you love understanding how societal structures work from the absolute ground up, you are definitely in the right place. All right, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the core of the nation. Then we'll move on to the architecture of needs, followed by the blueprint, and finally, wrap things up with the master builders. Okay, let's dive right into part one, the core of the nation defining the youth. Before we can figure out how to build a great citizen, we gotta know exactly who we're focusing on, right? And we need to understand why they are so absolutely critical to a country's future. The source text zeroes in on a very specific demographic, folks between the ages of 18 and 35. And honestly, this isn't just some random age bracket. The text highlights this exact group as the literal backbone, the driving force of the entire nation. Think about it. This is the window in life where human beings just possess maximum energy, pure ambition, and peak physical capability. They are, for sure, the engine of societal progress. But here's where the friction happens. What actually happens if we just ignore the foundational needs of this incredibly high-potential demographic? Well, the text doesn't mince words here. Unmet needs are the absolute root cause of profound frustration. If we don't actively channel that 18 to 25 energy by providing for their core requirements, all that raw potential goes sour. It turns into unemployment, negative activities, and eventually severe societal instability. It's a really high-stakes game.
Moving right along to Section 2, the architecture of needs, a multifaceted taxonomy.
Building a successful, stable citizen requires a ton of different materials. In fact, the text categorizes these into 15 distinct overlapping needs. We're going to start from the ground up, right at the bedrock, the foundation needs. This includes physical health, security, safety, and basic human necessities, food and shelter. And it makes perfect logical sense. Without physical well-being, safe environments, and basic provisions, you literally can't have higher-level development. I mean, you can't really teach advanced morality or career skills to someone who is fundamentally unsafe or unwell, right? Once that foundation is rock solid, we step up to the growth needs. We're talking education, employment, economic stability, and vocational skills. And this brilliantly illustrates how these elements are totally linked. It frames education not just as memorizing facts, but as a direct pathway to actual economic survival and vocational readiness. The text specifically calls out that providing employment and practical skills is absolutely crucial to prevent the massive danger of an idle mind. It's all about turning that raw youth energy into productive self-reliance. Finally, right at the top of our structure, we hit the higher order needs. Now, these are complex. We're looking at mental well-being, social integration, cultural identity, and intellectual and political leadership. To be a true, fully rounded citizen, you need strong moral direction. You need recreational outlets for mental peace, and the intellectual agility to adapt to political and technological landscapes that are changing literally every day. This right here is what separates mere survival from true civic contribution. So this brings us to a really pivotal question. Looking at all 15 of these complex, deeply overlapping needs, from basic physical health all the way up to political leadership, how on earth can society actually manage and fulfill them all? Government programs and schools, well, they can only do so much. So what is the central mechanism that actually builds this architecture? That leads us to Section 3, the blueprint and the concept of family education. To answer that big question, we actually look to a specific English definition that's nestled right there inside the original Bengali source text, family life education. The fact that the authors chose to highlight this exact phrasing gives it some serious academic weight. It's not just some loose, feel-good concept. It's a formalized, structured educational framework. Let's read this verbatim quote from the text together. It says, "Family life education is the professional practice to develop, equipping, and employing family members to develop knowledge and skills that enhance well-being and strengthen interpersonal relationship." Now, notice how this framing totally flips our standard view of the family. It takes the family from being just, a domestic living arrangement and turns it into a professional practice of rigorous, intentional skill building. It's a real game changer. Now, what's really interesting here is the clear contrast the text sets up. On one hand, we've got institutional education,
schools and universities that hand out degrees and formal qualifications in very structured external environments. But on the other hand, we have family education. This is where we learn the really deep stuff: courtesy, morality, tolerance, interpersonal ethics. Institutional education might get your foot on the door for a job, but it's that irreplaceable moral compass from family education that ultimately determines what kind of human being you'll be once you get there.
The text neatly chunks these family lessons into 9 specific types. Notice the balance in how these are grouped. On one side, we have character and morality, which covers things like religious ethics, social etiquette, and personal behavior. And then on the flip side, we've got practical life skills, learning self-reliance, health and cleanliness, career orientation, and even developing healthy recreational habits. Essentially, the family is tasked with balancing our inner moral character with the outward practical tools we need for everyday survival. And finally, Section 4, the Master Builders, the immense role of parents. Okay, so we know the needs and we know the educational framework, but who actually executes all this? Section 7.3 of the text zeroes in on the role of parents. And this is absolutely vital because it completely elevates parents. In this framework, they are no longer viewed as mere caretakers just providing food and shelter. No, they are explicitly designated as the essential primary educators in a citizen's life. And the text backs this up with some incredibly compelling evidence. It states, quote, "When parents are involved, students get better grades, have better attendance records, drop out less often, have higher aspirations." That is a powerful, evidence-based assertion right there. It basically proves that parental involvement is the ultimate deciding factor in a young person's trajectory. I mean, you can have literally the best schools in the world, but the engagement of the parents, that's the multiplier. That is what guarantees success. So what exactly is the core job description for these master builders today? Well, the text summarizes that a modern parent's biggest challenge, and honestly, their most vital role, is to be a continuous source of inspiration. In a rapidly modernizing world that's just full of distractions, shifting values, and intense economic pressures, parents have to actively inspire youth. They have to anchor them morally, all while encouraging them to successfully navigate a highly competitive, ever-changing society.
And that brings us to a deeply provocative thought I want to leave you with today. Remember that 18 to 35 demographic we started with? The youth, the core of the nation? Well, they are tomorrow's parents. They're the very next generation of master builders. So we really have to ask ourselves, are they receiving the right family education right now to equip them to build the generation that follows? It's a fascinating, endless cycle of societal development. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer today. I really hope this structural view of youth and family education has given you an entirely new perspective on how our society actually operates. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.